Koutou katoa and welcome back to the 8th and final session of the long-term plan submissions. Welcome those of you who are here to submit also. I'm Karen Naylor and I'll be chairing this session. If we just can first go over the health and safety requirements. So if the alarm does go, your exits are to the side and the back, and we would need to assemble in the clock tower Te Marae o Hine, the square. Smoking is not prohibited. There's a defibrillator located downstairs in the reception area, behind the reception area, in a red box if anyone needs it. And if there are any incidents, please report to the committee administrator. This meeting is being recorded and will be on the council website and will also be live streamed. We'll just move to the apologies. So we have apologies for late arrival from Councillor Dennison, Councillor Butt, and we have apologies on council business from Councillors Bowen. Oh, this has changed. There's a few changes here. So Councillor Hapata and Dingwell are here, and Councillor Rutherford is here. So I think it's just...
Oh, and Councillor Meehan has put in his apologies.
Meehan. So apologies for Councillor Meehan and late arrival for Councillor Dennison and Butt. Are there any other apologies?
Sorry, Madam Chair, that was early departure for Councillor Dingwall and Hapata. That's right. Okay. On council business.
Okay, so I'd move that and seconded by... Oh,
sorry,
Deputy
Madam
Mayor.
Chair, we've got an apology from the Mayor on council business.
Okay, we'll add that to the list. And also Councillor Michalad. He's there, lovely. Moved and seconded by Councillor Hapata, thanks. And I don't believe there's any additional items. Oh, sorry, if you can vote on that. Have we got 10? And that's passed 100%. I don't believe there's any additional items. Are there any declarations of interest for the items that we've got this afternoon? Okay, so we'll just move to Councillor Dingwell, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note that my name is mentioned in submission 559, but I do not believe that to be a conflict of interest.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor?
Oh, no, Madam Chair, I was in the queue to tell you the Mayor's apologies.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the resolution to note the procedures sheet, which is outlined on the table. I'm happy to move that, seconded by Councillor Hapata. If we can vote, please. Thank you. So for those of you, if there's anyone here that's not familiar with the system, we have a light system here. The green light goes on for 7 minutes, the orange light for 2 minutes, and then the red light is for your final minute. So there's 10 minutes allocated to each speaker. I'd encourage you to use less time than that to enable time for councillors to ask questions if you're happy with that, as a question time is included in your 10 minutes allocation. Welcome, Kerry. Over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I really appreciate your commitment and your attention given to all those who have come before you, presenting their hopes and dreams for the community. So what's working well from a cancer prevention and survivorship perspective? I'm encouraged by the priorities identified in the long-term plan, the associated community plans, and the recognition of the impact of climate change. Well done to the council staff in integrating the health-related policies into these plans. The Connected Community Plan's goal of us being a healthy, smoke-free and sun-smart community is achievable and vital if we're going to lessen the burden of cancer. With our smoke-free and vape-free policy and smoke-free outdoor dining, we have helped create environments that support reducing the incidence and impact of smoking-related cancers. The recognition of sun-smart policies and shade planning, outdoor community events, outdoor work, and in our local schools gives me hope that one day New Zealand will no longer hold the record for the highest number of melanoma deaths in the world. In Council Programme 1852, it's great to see the need for equity, shade and accessible play spaces being recognised in the development of recreation facilities across our community. And I'd really like to acknowledge Glenn Finlayson and his team for recognising the need for shade and their great work they've done at Memorial and Milverton Parks, the Esplanade and the Lido. So what still needs our attention? Cancer is now the #1 killer in New Zealand, with every year the number of people affected by cancer being expected to increase to up to 50% of the population by 2035. There's still much work to be done if we're going to reduce the visibility and harm of smoking to our next generation. For our city, we have smoking statistics of 12.6% of the population compared to 13.2% nationally. However, not time to feel complacent. In our more deprived communities in the Palmerston North region, the smoking rates can vary from 25.8% of the Highbury community smoking to 70.4% of the 30 to 64-year-olds in Milson smoking. These are from Stats New Zealand. This shows we cannot afford to lessen our commitment to the goal of becoming smoke-free by 2025. Smoking is also leaving its presence felt on the environment too, with over 6 million cigarette filters or tobacco waste presently ending up on our beaches, in our urban areas, in playgrounds, sports fields, gutters, and eventually making its way via stormwater drains to rivers, lakes, and out to sea, contributing to huge plastic islands. The recent government Smoke-Free Action Plan consultation gave you an opportunity to advocate to make current local authority best practice outdoor policies a matter of law for all of New Zealand so everyone can benefit. The recent council meeting that I attended indicated this was an action the council were interested in pursuing, and I hope the Chief Executive was able to act on this recommendation. The closing date is May the 31st, just in case you haven't. So looking at the climate change plan through a SunSmart lens, it's wonderful to see the plan address impacts of climate change by reducing carbon emissions, regenerating native biodiversity, increasing the health of the Manawatu River, and expanding the Green Corridors scheme. However, there is also a threat to human health, with an increase in ozone depletion resulting in a possible increase in skin cancer rates in New Zealand. This is becoming a topic for research internationally. Mean temperatures within Australia are projected to rise by 0.6 to 1.5% by 2030. And they've compared the climate of 1980 to 1999 to present day. Warmer temperatures may result in Australians increasing their sun exposure and wearing less covering clothing, thereby increasing their risk of skin cancer. An American study concluded that climate change will bring an acute toll worldwide, with rising temperatures, wildfire, poor air quality accompanied by higher rates of cancer, especially lung, skin and gastrointestinal cancers. The present housing demand has created smaller sections. Future homes with backyard trees for families to enjoy and children to play on will probably no longer be part of the New Zealand way of life. Neighbouring parks providing shade, green spaces, trees to climb, and street tree canopies will be strategies that will become even more important, providing safe and enjoyable places to play and mitigating the effects of climate change to reduce the impact of increasing temperatures and increasing UV levels during summer. So what can you as a council do to help reduce the harm from UV radiation? The slip, slop, slap and wrap message that our children and grandchildren are probably very familiar with needs to be heard, seen and put into action by us all as a normal way of being in the summer months. SunSmart community education, shade planning, tree planting, SunSmart event management and work practices will be important strategies to address New Zealand's increasing rates of skin cancer and our record melanoma death rate. Say yes to Council Programme 1852, ensuring that shade planning is funded in the long-term plan to address shade needed in play spaces in our high deprivation communities. In the long-term plan, I also noticed that the Council had identified long-term community access to the Massey Community Athletics track. This is an area that still needs to be assessed by the Council shade audit process. All too often we're getting schools particularly coming back saying, there's still not enough shade out there, our children are getting sunburnt, we try really hard to protect them. The consultation process for the long-term plan has resulted in high demand for an aquatic centre and a call for increased council investment in sport and recreation. If these are to be outdoor facilities, please consider these with a SunSmart and health impact lens. The benefits and costs of proposed development across our community need to be distributed equitably so people living in high deprivation areas are not further disadvantaged. Thank you for your attention today. I'm happy to answer any questions, as long as they're not too hard.
Thanks, Kerry. First question from the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kerry, for your submission and numerous submissions over the years as well. My question is around your, so I'm looking at your list of recommendations in your written submission. Your final point is that a street tree policy be considered. And you've talked about why in regards to what that could achieve, but I'm wondering if you've got a, I guess, a vision on what outcomes it would specifically have around coverage or number of trees or how many streets are planted up, those sorts of things in terms of like an actual program of works. And I guess just to provide context, is this has come through a couple of submissions, and so if we're to respond to that, we need to work out what that would look like and at what pace that would be rolled out. So your thoughts would be useful.
I think that was one of the things that I was considering when I wrote that, and that's why I actually attached that thing about the benefits of trees. And so it's obviously something that councils, certainly internationally, are struggling with this, especially when you start looking at the impact of tree roots coming up through the footpath. So there has to be ways to be able to, whether it's looking at what trees are going to have shallow root system that aren't going to do that, but also still provide good shade canopy coverage as well. So as far as like timeline, details, stuff like that, no, I don't have a thought about But I'm certainly aware that, and you all would be too, driving around, biking around streets, that you would know that there were some trees, that some city streets that just don't have any shade whatsoever. And they would be the good ones to start with, I think. But also having the equity lens put over it too, equity and a SunSmart lens, so that helps identify where the priority areas are.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kerry. There's no further questions. And your submission will be considered by councillors on the 9th of June, where we deliberate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just like to invite John McGifford, from Central Football. Welcome. Welcome, John. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors, for the opportunity to speak today to Central Football's to the LTP submission, which relates to the artificial turf plan for Palmerston North. I apologise for having to read off my laptop. I very carefully prepared some notes before I left home, put them in the bag and picked up the wrong bag, so apologies for that. Thank goodness I had this. I've also got no intent to speak at any length of the submission. It's not the first time I've sat in this chair, and I certainly don't want to dwell on things that council have already heard or you've already considered in your papers. So I'd prefer to leave some time at the end for any questions that may be there. Just by way of brief background though, an artificial turf for football has been in the LTP since 2015, with construction originally scheduled for 2021 at a cost of 1.753 million. 50% of which was to be fundraised, 50% of which was to be fundraised, which made council's contribution 876,500. Construction was later rescheduled for 2021-2022, and then further rescheduled for 2023-2024. The 2023-2024 construction is pending a feasibility assessment for training and competition requirements for outdoor sports codes being completed, which is scheduled for 2021-2022. I'm uncertain as to the proposed council contribution to the turf now. I am led to believe it is reduced, but stand to be corrected on that, and certainly hope I am. Central Football understands and supports the reasons why the turf has been pushed back in the LTP, and especially the need for the work around the outdoor codes facility needs assessment, which was completed early to mid-2020. This needs assessment clearly showed that of the outdoor codes, football has the greatest needs in terms of expanded facilities, and from a cost, usage and long-term benefit analysis, it would appear that an artificial turf is the best option. The main thrust of this commentary is to advise council that Central Football's needs for an artificial turf have not waned but have grown. In 2021, we have a 10.5% increase in senior teams alone. It takes from 67 to 74 on last year, with last year remaining consistent with 2019, even given the COVID-19 disruptions. So football needs continue to grow on what is already a strong number base, which is identified in the needs assessment and evidenced by the Sport New Zealand figures in that report. As also noted in the needs assessment, Central Football has taken a conservative approach to growth over the next 10 years, with that approach based on growth over the last 10 years. Based on population growth though, the needs assessment actually projects a 15.8% increase in playing numbers to 2030. To repeat an earlier comment, and again as identified in the needs assessment, we currently have issues servicing the game with current numbers, let alone any growth, whether it be conservative or significant. Given Central Football's growth in playing numbers in 2021 and the evidence data from the needs assessment, I'd ask the council give our submission urgent consideration, which I repeat as as it relates to the artificial turf for football, that the feasibility assessment scheduled in the LTP for 2021-2022 be completed by the end of 2021. Assuming that assessment finds in favour of the project, it is important that enough time is allowed for site selection and, very importantly, to allow sufficient time for fundraising to cover any shortfall out of Council's contribution. Just interesting on that last note in terms of fundraising, I was in Wellington this morning and meeting with the New Zealand Community Trust, who we know are great funders of many things in many communities, including sport. And we were talking about Central Football's whole demographics, which covers 5 regions, Manawatu being our largest of them, and the need for improved sporting facilities around a lot of them. And of course, Manawatu came up, and I was told there that this project is something that our New Zealand Community Trust would be very likely to support. So I just thought I'd add that in because it was fresh news, fresh off the press this morning. The second part of our submission is that the construction of the artificial turf remains scheduled for 2023-2024, with an aim to be playing on the turf by winter 2024. In closing, I would like to thank council officers for all the work they've done on this project and their thorough engagement with Central Football around council process and planning. And I thank councillors for the inclusion of the turf in the LTP, and again for the opportunity to present today. I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you, John. There are a couple of questions. Firstly from Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, John, for your presentation. Originally, when this first came to council several years ago, there was some funding from the Central Football Association tagged to it, and that was, I believe, one of the reasons why it started to progress quite faster than other projects. So can you please tell us where that funding might be, or is it an aberration?
The funding actually came from New Zealand, from what they called FIFA outcome funding, but that stream of funding is now closed up. It's not available. Interesting, they granted the last round of funding that they were going to do from that fund last year to Dunedin for an artificial turf. So unfortunately, that funding opportunity is now closed. That's not to say that Central Football would certainly not consider a contribution themselves towards this.
Thank you.
And Councillor Habita.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, John. Has Central Football used the artificial turf at the arena?
We've actually used, well, yes, we have. Unfortunately, with the arena, I mean, it's a great facility, and council should be commended and thanked for it, is unfortunately it only really services one football club in Palmerston North, because Palmerston North Marist are based there, and they are the biggest football club in Palmerston North. It's very much become a home ground for them, and they actually, whilst football takes up 70% of the bookings at arena, Manawatu Marist probably take up 90% of the 70%, if that makes sense. So we haven't been able to make much use of it because it's quite simply booked out.
But it is a booking system that you can book it?
Oh, it is, yes. There is a booking system, but you know, they seem very much inclined to give first choice to Palmerston North Marist.
Okay.
Which I'm not critical of it, so it's great they've got that facility on their doorstep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all, appears to be all the questions, so thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Ethel and Flo Gibson, submission number 543.
Good afternoon, Councillor Naylor, Chair, councillors, fellow Bunnythorpians who are present to support us today. Thank you for giving us the time to speak to our submission, re the 10-year plan 2021-2031. We, Ethel and I, strongly support the first point of the Bunnythorpe community submission regarding the transport plan, most particularly re the Freight Ring Road. And our own comment is that this has been going on since at least 2007, if not before, of which I have maps with options. 14 years is too long for such an important decision to be made. And going through the rest of the Bunnythorpe community submission, I think theirs is later this afternoon, we agree with item 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Item 2 being conversations requested regarding the domain land between Stony Creek Road and Tuteki Road. Item 3, that the community take over the distribution of future PNCC information with the funds used to support local organisations. This is in response to the poor postal service within the Bunnythorpe village and greater area. 4, footpaths needed on multiple roads plus drain issues and lack of curbing in various areas. Please note that I will discuss this in my own submission or our own submission. 5, better lighting within the village and beyond, we agree with. 6, CCTV, funding request for areas as already notified the Bunnythorpe community submission. Now to our own submission. Bunnythorpe, a footpath request. Just a reminder to PNCC that this has been notified multiple times over the years. To quote, Bunnythorpe Community Submission 2020. This specifically relates to a footpath from Nathan Place to Pars Road, dangerous for all pedestrians, young, adults, children, toddlers, pushchairs, etc. Only one side of Stony Creek Road is available for walking on grass, which is often wet, and it is uphill or downhill, depending on which way it's being walked. Blind rise, open drain, steep bank. Ethel and I had delivered information to 40 residents requesting feedback from the Stony Creek Road, Nathan Place to Pars Road, Sangsters Road from Cleverley Road to Pars Road, and Pars Road in entirety. We have received positive responses from 7, being 5.7%, but this probably affects at least 20 residents, if not more. And I'll just abbreviate all of these emails that I received back. We should also be requesting a footpath on Cleverley Line and Pars Road. It is needed for both these roads. We support a proposed footpath from Nathan Place along Stony Creek Road to the corner of Pars Road. I have walked this path many times, especially through COVID, and a footpath would be a real asset. So many people walk around this area. It would be well used and much safer than walking on the edge of the road. We live along Sangsters Road and would like to add our support. We definitely need a footpath along there before something tragic happens. With the grass becoming bogged as soon as it has rained, it makes it almost impossible to walk on, which means resorting to walking on the road verge. It would be so nice to know that our families could walk the block without fearing for their safety and also lessen the hazards for vehicles to deal with. These people had a son who finished high school recently, but he had to walk to Bunnythorpe to catch the bus, and it was really rather dangerous. He ended up with wet feet from walking on the grass, which is not a great start for the school day. And then there was the amount of shoes that got ruined by continually being wet. Additionally, as the grass area is so uneven with many holes that could break an ankle, I'm afraid I run the gauntlet and run on the verge of the road. This can be extremely scary when a truck goes past, and even the traffic in general doesn't really slow down to the speed limit until near the sharp bend in Bunnythorpe. I walk this regularly and would love to see a path. Would be good to see one down Pars Road and Sangsters Road too. Stony Creek Road is very busy, and it is unpleasant to have so many cars whizzing past one at speed. Many other people use this stretch of road as well when they are out exercising their dogs. A footpath would be a vast improvement, as we pay rates like every other Palms North resident who all have the benefits of footpaths. I don't think this is too much to ask. I support a footpath from Nathan Place to Pars Road. And those are all the emails and one text message that I received. There is a lack of curbing and channelling along Dixon's Line, particularly from Barring/Little Street to Red Main Street. Raymond Street upgrade. As the new community centre is well underway, there will be increased issues with curbing and channelling along the street. Currently, on one side, there is a width of grass that overgrows the concrete footpath, resulting in water flowing over it, which makes walking hazardous and most unpleasant. Stormwater system, refer to our submission. I don't want to repeat it all. Footpath repairs is self-explanatory. The Bunnythorpe Cemetery, refer to our submission. A number of people have spoken to us regarding the lack of toilets at the site. There are a lot of elderly people who visit on a regular basis. The cemetery to be on a regular basis, they visit the cemetery to be with their loved ones. Nature calls much more frequently for this group particularly, and the public toilets are too far away. Item 6 has already been covered with a community submission. Refer to our submission, read better management of PNCC staff-free footpath overgrowth, etc. City growth, refer to our submission. Transport strategic plan, refer to our submission. PNCC Goal 2, active communities. Adult exercise equipment, this has been spoken about on a number of occasions at public meetings, but was also contained in the community submission of 2020. To reiterate, just one piece of adult equipment is being requested. According to your goal, that's PNCC goal, surely this should include such local equipment for the health of residents, along with keeping them active. This is a PNCC goal we would like to see implemented. PNCC Goal 3, as per submission, refer to Goal 2 above. Overflowing of sewage into private properties and also under houses. This has been notified to PNCC a number of times. We believe this problem should be treated with every urgency, particularly as it is a most serious health hazard issue and has been ongoing for far too long in Bunnythorpe. The Bunnythorpe water supply. The residents of Bunnythorpe must be involved with all aspects of PNCC, planned, new and one-off actions. There needs to be a good level of discussions and involvement before such action is taken. Finally, we welcome questions and thank you for listening and hopefully noting all of our concerns, not only as individuals, but also the concerns of the Bunnythorpe community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, does anyone have a question? No, there doesn't appear to be any questions, so thank you, Ethel and Flo. Your submission will be considered.
Thank you.
And I'd like to invite John Charlton from Kelvin Grove Community Association, submission number 550. And Ross Linklater is also joining him, I understand. Welcome back, Ross.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and councillors. I'm Ross Linklater, and with me this afternoon is John Charlton. John is manager of the Kelvin Grove Hall, the author of the submission that you received, and we are both members of the Kelvin Grove Community Association, which in the future we may refer to as KGCA, just for abbreviation. As you can appreciate from the submission, our primary concern is the safety of the users of the hall and the adjoining Kaimanawa Park. Apparently, we are the only council-owned community hall in the city with no car park provided nearby. You will read in the submission that Kaimanawa Street is heavily used by cars and trucks. Combined with the heavy usage is the fact that there is a lot of curves in the road which prevents long sight lines between traffic and pedestrians. The potential for an accident with people, particularly children or elderly, disembarking or embarking from cars on a very busy road is far greater than a car park alongside a hall. At our last KGCA meeting, we were advised that the City Council's estimate of cost to provide a 20-car car park plus a 1.5 metre wide concrete path to the hall's rear entrance was $236,000. Based on that, the Community Association passed a motion to offer $36,000 towards the construction, provided that it occurs in the next financial year. Since that meeting, we have received an email advising that to improve the hall's side entrance direct from the car park, raise the total estimate to $240,000. The Community Association in recent times equipped the hall with good sound system and overhead projector. Also, some additional outdoor lighting and hall signage is underway and paid for by KGCA. The Kelvin Grove community is growing at a rapid rate, and we anticipate hall usage to also grow. Therefore, councillors, please give serious consideration to our submission. And I will now hand over to John to add his words towards this, and he certainly is doing a great job looking after our hall and working in our community, and has got the latest up-hand information.
Thank you, Ross, and thank you very much for the opportunity to make a submission. I know you've got a lot of competing items for your expenditure, so I'd just like to make a few points as to why this should be a high priority, in fact a very high priority for the council. So, as we said, we're the only community facility of this nature in Palmerston North which doesn't have an off-road car park, and Ross has already explained about the dangers of that from a traffic point of view. Why don't we have a car park? Well, originally, when the hall was moved there in 1980, it was only going to be there for 3 years, and it wasn't thought to be a necessity because then the hall was going to be moved. It originally came from the square, from the Centennial Pavilion, to another site, so the car park wasn't put there in the first place, and also Kaimanawa Street in those days was a pretty quiet suburban street, and Kelvin Grove was a lot smaller than it is now. 41 years later, the community centre is a very well patronised permanent fixture beside Kaimanawa Park, which you can see there in the picture, which also has a children's playground. Kaimanawa Street is a major thoroughfare with a lot of trucks coming to and fro, and milk tankers from the industrial area up to Tremaine Avenue. And with no off-street parking, and most of the parking being on the opposite side of the road to the hall, the danger is obvious. And Kelvin Grove is actually must be Palmerston North's fastest growing suburb, with the new developments in James Line and Napier Road. So hall utilisation can only increase in the future. So that's why it's 40 years since the car park should have been there. The need is getting higher, the danger is getting higher, and the Community Association is willing to make a substantial contribution towards this car park, which will benefit many, many people in the area and greater city. Finally, I'd like to say thank you to the council staff who support the hall and their prompt attention to all maintenance issues, and for coming to attend our regular monthly meetings. It's really great to have the involvement and support of them. And thank you very much for the opportunity to make this submission.
Thank you both. We do have a few questions. Firstly, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, John and Ross. I've just got one question. With the additional modifications that were advised around needing to do some treatment to the side entrance to connect up and adding on an additional figure, do you deem that would be required at this time, or would that just be desirable?
Well, it'd be highly desirable. As you can see from the picture there, the car park's on the opposite side of the hall from the main entrance, so it gives originally we wanted a road all the way back to the kitchen entrance at the back, so by enhancing that entrance, people can then use that entrance as a main entrance between the hall and the car park to, before events, load in and out of the kitchen, and during events, so they don't have to walk all the way around onto the road to get into the hall. So it's highly desirable, and if it was going to be a deal breaker, I think I can say on behalf of the committee we would look positively, especially if it was going to be within the next financial year, to find that additional $4,000 to complete that facility to make the car park so much more useful.
That was going to be my next question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And
I'm
just
also the treasurer, by the way, so...
one further question from Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, John. And it's just a follow-on from the Deputy Mayor. So the items 1 and 2, you just mentioned the figure 4,000. Is that for both of those items?
That's for the, I understand from council staff that that's the additional cost to enhance the landing outside the entrance door between the hall directly onto the car park.
And what about the 1.5 metre wide footpath from the car park?
That's already included in the 236, I believe.
Okay, so there's only $4,000 difference. Okay.
The $4,000 was for the, we want a big enough landing there that you can open the doors and bring stuff up from the car park and take it through to the kitchen.
And the 1.5 metre wide footpath, what is the percentage of cost of that to the 240,000? It doesn't matter if you haven't got that.
I don't have that number. Originally, we wanted a full driveway over there, and I think that was about another 40,000, wasn't it, Ross? We needed all-weather access back to the back of the hall, and the footpath was a compromise as opposed to vehicle access, which was our preference and is still possibly an enhancement for a later date.
Okay, no, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a little extra footnote that Aaron Phillips had attended our community meeting, and the footpath at that stage, the 1.5 metre wide footpath, was definitely included in the 236.
And I'll point out that the back of the hall, there's a room at the back of the hall which has its own, it's a separate facility and it has its own separate entrance with its own separate wheelchair ramp. So that 1.5 metre path provides disabled access to that part of the hall.
Okay, thank you, John and Ross. Your submission will be considered as a part of the deliberations in a couple of weeks by councillors.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
And we'll just invite Joe Erkins, submission number 551.
Thank you. I've only sent in a short submission to the annual budget because I have said in the past many things and I'm referring to my own words again. But I like it to add something to it still. So I wrote a bit of a piece of paper. While it is nice to have a say about what a ratepayer like to see in the budget, we should be mindful that with the limited amount of rates money, not everything can be done. Saying that the rates were, as I understand, introduced to cover the cost of infrastructure and council buildings, this over the years after the introduction expanded largely to probable including projects which are beyond what many ratepayers expected. If we are going to, from what it was in the past, all the pipes, services in the ground, the buildings, the roads. We are now going into all different areas which are more beautifying the city, and we forget that we do put the icing on the cake, but we forget that the cake itself is coming away. And that's what is called the city. Yeah, if we do first infrastructure and the money that is left over, then we can spend it on other items. What is more desirable? But the items what we need, we have seen in the past, last year, that in the Cuba Street, the sewer main burst. And we had to, very soon, we had to do a lot of work in that area because it's 110 years old. But it's beyond the lifespan of a pipe. And all those projects were not, which are not part of the infrastructure, are draining away money required for those large infrastructure requirements. Now the PNCC has issued a booklet outlining the requirements for wastewater and the cost of this. However, the PNCC expects us, the ratepayer, to pay more for those essential projects. As you know, as I know, it is 25% over the next 3 years. As a person on a fixed benefit, with pension, I can't ask the government at the end of the year, oh, I need 10 or more % more. They don't give it to me. They only give me a limited amount. And I have to work inside my budget. But the council is not looking at that particular area. The council is just demanding that they need more money because they have the other projects as well. And that's what I said before. Forget those other projects for a moment and look at what you have to do, instead of doing everything what you don't have to do. We have seen in the past solar panels which should have reduced the amount of power we use. We have never heard about it. I know that after the second year they decided not to say anything more because the power had reduced by 50%. Yeah, we had street lighting into LEDs, and the same happens here. And there are many more. I've spoken about it in the past. Now the PNCC is spending ratepayers' money to invest in battery-powered technology. Very nice, I have to say, but it is part of the environment. If you go into that area, think before you start. Have a look at what it costs to produce one of those vehicles compared to with a standard vehicle. According to Volkswagen, they have looked into that particular area, and it cost 200,000 kilometers of an electric-powered vehicle to be environmentally friendlier than the other vehicle. And it's because of the materials used in it and the complete cost of making the vehicle. And that's what I'm saying. Another area is, if you look at the hills, you have all those nice windmills standing there. It's good that we have those windmills because they have a cheap electrical power to us. Hang on, people. We should look at what is inside it first. Electronic boxes which are inside make sparks. The sparks can make a fire inside the tower. And to reduce that, the sparks and the fire, what they can develop, they put a gas in it. That gas in it is 50 times more dangerous than a car driving over the road. And it is not a solid sealed unit because there is a gasket on it. And the gasket is leaking, seeping the gas out. So they have to fill it up every time. The advantage is that we have developed a gearbox or a unit box, but it's not sparking as much and is reducing the fire. But it's more costly. And we have to look at what we have put on the hill first before we start deciding, are we going to for those windmills or are we going against it? Because on the other side, we have to look at the environment as well. In the past, the Palmerston North Council had decided that it was cheaper to use contractors for the work. And we have never given an example what was cheaper. If you look at the Cook Street corner, opposite the car park, of the Esplanade, sorry, that was, according to the council, was about $700,000, $800,000. But it's a firm amount. However, the cheapest contractor was 1.6 million. And then I asked myself, if the council had workers in their own unit, but can do a part of the work themselves, are we not cheaper off hiring the equipment and doing the work and keeping the work inside, then we can control also the quality of it. But in my submission, as you have probably read, I've talked about the square and the surrounding streets, the footpath on it. Well, I won't be happy as a person who gives someone a contract to do it, to expect that that work, what it is there, will be to my satisfaction, because it is not completely. I hope that you have done all what I have asked for, to walk around the square and the side streets. They probably would have found out what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm looking a little bit after an older lady, and when she has to walk over the square, I will tell her that there is something of a pothole coming up, or she has to watch out, otherwise she may trip, because her eyesight is not that well. And that's what I'm asking. When we spend 80 million, be sure that the 80 million is spent well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. There's just one question from me at this point. Towards the end of your submission, you talk about the 25% rate increase over the next 3 years, and you're concerned that fixed income people cannot afford those sort of increases and that we should stick to our core business. I'm just wondering if you could give some examples of what you think is included in the plan that isn't core business.
For core business, Karen, I see what I've said before. The buildings, the roads, and the infrastructure, what is in the ground. Yeah, part of it is the wastewater, rainwater, and the drink water. We have had a large explosion of people in the Palmerston area, but the drink water itself has not enlarged. We have no storage for it, and every year we get the same question, conserve.
Thank you. And just one further question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Joe, for your submission. So at the start of your submission, you said that you thought that we should spend 50% of our money on wastewater, stormwater and drinking water. And what do you think we should spend the other 50% on?
That's what I'm saying before. If we spend first 50% on the essentials, then we may say we have 50% left over what we can spend on the less essentials for beautifying the city. But if we turn it around and we spend 90% on beautifying the city and only 10% on the essentials, then we, at the end of the day, we have to ask the people of Palmerston North to provide more money. And that's what it is.
So are you aware what the government considers to be essential? You know, what the government tells us that is essential?
The government is an essential area, of course. And you are part of it, but that's the way I see it, because we can't exclude you out of it. But I want to work everybody to a budget. So, efficiency, that's the main priority always been.
So are you aware that the government tells us that we need to take into account social, cultural and environmental aspects as well as economic ones?
Yeah, but it is up to the council to give a word to the government that have not the money for it. And then they have to ask the government to provide them with the money and not go to us and provide them with the money, because that is not the way to do it, in my view.
Okay, so we should be going to government to ask for more money.
That's my view of it. If they demand of you to do certain items, then they should provide you with the essentials for it as well.
I think we might agree on something there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe, for your submission. That'll be considered on the 9th of June.
Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. And just like to invite Stuart Herricks from the Environment Network, Manawatu, submission number 503. And just for those who have joined us, there is 10 minutes for each submission, and that includes time for questions from councillors. So if you're able to keep your submission to a little bit less time than that, then that'll allow for questions also. Thank you, Stuart. Over to you.
Thank you, councillors. Once again, the Environment Network Manawatu is pleased to speak to our submission. We have briefly covered E&M's general position in our introduction, and we do appreciate the diverse challenges the Council faces for this 2021 LTP in the midst of such major changes and resilience requirements affecting Council's core business. So I will speak in the order of the goals and as set out in our written submission. Goal 1, innovative and growing city growth. In addition to our comments, we would like to see better sustainable living goals set by bylaws to give clean and clear direction. We support our member groups' transport submission and various individual members' emissions reductions ideas in their submissions. Goal 2, In light of the pressures of the essential big budget items, we believe that investment such as in the rearrangement in the square and similar nice-to-have projects are of low priority. Substantial savings could be made here. City shaping, retention of reserves and council land for public use is an intergenerational obligation of councils. Public use may be transient and varied in terms of the vagaries of time and needs, but it is ongoing, and I believe not to retain such land for public use would be disrespectful of the kaitiaki role that the council plays. Goal 3, connected communities. We cannot overemphasise the value of coordination within the city's many volunteer organisations. These people form the glue that smooths and connects the real heart of the city. Goal 4, the eco-city. This goal will be seen by many as our field of interest, but the essence of sustainability demonstrates the interconnectedness of all of the goals as they affect us. They need to be recognised, they each need to recognise each other. Climate change. I note that though the Environment Network is listed as a partner in 5 of the city plans, the Environment Network is not listed in the climate change plan. Noting also that it's a draft, but hopefully that will be changed ultimately. The plan does seem to be in a very preliminary stage. We know now that the IPCC report underestimated further warming and various other influences. A 30% reduction represents the lowest hanging fruit. We are out of time. We must show that we're serious in this matter and take urgent action to go harder. Effective messaging to the public in the Square Circular and other media is needed for all sustainability and resilience initiatives, but in particular climate change related actions, so the community can understand the value of necessary changes and so become part of the necessary adjustment and not separate from it. A published barometer of CO2 variation would help illustrate the progress. Manawatu River resource recovery and water. We reinforce our Nature Call submission. We would like to see steps taken to minimise wastewater, such as water meters with a base volume sum included in rates, grey water reuse incentives, and particular requirements for new houses. Costings for discharge to land in excess of 55%, i.e. 65, 75, 85, etc., should be made available to the councillors before they make their decisions. There are systems such as diverting drains and wetlands which would restore lost biodiversity along the Manawatu River. These would have great potential for biomass production at a time when fossil fuel reliance is 19th century thinking. We do not want discharge to the sea. That would be shameful for an eco-city. Environmental sustainability. The value proposition of our organisation and member groups is and will continue to be substantial in helping amplify the messaging of the benefits of resilience and collective informed participation out to the wider public. We would like to see more celebration of good local environmental practices, commercial, private and public, by storytelling. Biodiversity. Our submission of support speaks for itself. We are very pleased with the good work the council and council members and staff are doing in this field. The enabling aspect of E&M's objectives is expanding into some very exciting future initiatives. So watch this space. We're very excited. Goal 5, a driven and enabling city. I'd just like to say there that as stakeholders in so many of Council's plans and programs, we do look forward to ongoing discussions and collaborations, and we do appreciate Council's receptiveness to our input and initiatives, especially in the food and waste minimisation space. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. We do have some questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Stuart, for your submission, and particularly for the broad range of comments you've provided around things you support and have commented on. It's really useful for us when we go into deliberations. I've got two questions. There's a comment in your submission around the Palmy climate calculator not proving to be popular, and I just wondered if you could expand on that, because obviously that's mentioned quite a bit when we talk about what the council is doing.
Yes, well, we generally, when we had a lot of people together, asked, what did they think of that and how did that work? And I don't think there was any positive feedback about it at all, which was interesting because there was a mix of ages there, and they weren't all environmentalists, there were other people. It was a general space, and you could say that maybe there's certain types of people think in that way, and I'm sure that that's it was set up by because we all have a different way of seeing things and benefiting from things, but we didn't really get any good feedback, which was. So we're just really reporting on that.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. And then just in regards to the Enviro Hub, and obviously you've submitted on this in the past with a bit more detail around what you envisaged. We've had some submissions around community hubs or collaborative working spaces, or essentially just community organisations that are wanting to partner up for enhanced facilities, and I wondered whether you thought there could be an opportunity or whether it needed to be a little bit more ring-fenced around people who are working within the same kind of kaupapa in the environmental space, or whether you thought that that could be an opportunity for it to be a bit of a community hub at the same time for other office space or meeting spaces, those kind of things? Yeah, well, as I've said there, I think everything that the council does, well, most things that the council do, we have... that they all connect into each other in some way, and the more we have the sense of community working together, the more there's an understanding of how we work and how we move. We all need an understanding, whether it's in health, there's an environmental aspect to that, and food and waste minimisation, and the cost factors, saving money and the value proposition in that collaborative action. I see no reason why it shouldn't be. It shouldn't include some other, similarly inclined. It wouldn't sort of have anything to do with the motor industry or anything like that, but things for it that would help to make a community function better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. And just a quick question from me. You've made a comment about the investment in the square, that it's a low priority and unnecessary. I'm just wondering if you would. Are you talking about the Full Streets for People program, and if so, what's your reason for saying that?
Well, we were told to concentrate on items which could give a budgetary benefit, things that we would consider low priority. I think that the square should not have irregular paving where people fell into potholes, as were mentioned before. It should be safe. But I think there's a lot of ways that the community can help in placemaking that haven't really been, well, they have been investigated in some places like Hokowhitu and around in the suburbs. But temporary spaces and opportunities for temporary actions make for an interesting community, and where people are seen doing activities as far as being fancy and putting money into those sort of, sort of elegant spaces. I don't really see that as a priority when we have so many really big budget items, over the next 3 years, say, for example.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Appreciate you coming in and making a submission today. That concludes your time, but that will be considered by councillors in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. And I'd just like to invite Noel McCormack, submission number 609.
Good afternoon. My submission is prompted by events that took place in my home city of Belfast, Northern Ireland, back in the 1970s. IRA activity was reducing the city into a state of chaos, and something had to be done. The city was eventually walled off, but all the entrance points were managed by strict security. The only transport allowed into the CBD was police, public transport, emergency services, and taxis. I emigrated to New Zealand and came back and visited Belfast a number of years later. All the gates and railings had been removed, but the system of only public transport and emergency services allowed in the CBD. That was really something, when I spoke to people about it, they would not want to go back to the way it was. I'm convinced that that was an improvement. That has led me to look at Palmerston North. As far as I'm concerned, Broadway needs to be changed. I believe that there should be nothing other than public transport similar to what was organised in Belfast. Waste material and the replenishing of stores in Belfast was done only between 12 o'clock at night and 6 the following morning. That presented a few problems, but it was accepted. It may be something that could be tried here. I would not make any provision at this time for any alternative parking because of the loss of parking in Broadway. Now, I had a look at Main Street, and that presents a bigger challenge. Retail outlets are relatively sparse. Pedestrian traffic is light as a consequence. Removing private cars from the bus station to Princess Street would provide an opportunity. The area down the spine of Main Street, I think, should have a construction, I would call it a pavilion, probably starting about 20 metres from the bus station and terminating about 20 metres from the end of Princess Street, to the end of the intersection of Princess Street. This construction, I believe, should be sealed at each end and probably on the court side, but the side facing the other part of the construction should be left open. I think this would provide a very attractive meeting place for families. There would be no vehicles, there would be no pollution, and it would be safer for people, children there too. That central spine with this construction would necessitate having, say, even ATMs and public toilets involved in it, but there may be many other areas and many other things that could be introduced there which would keep the area and keep that place a real central part for the public. Should the removal of parking facilities in Main Street and in Broadway be a problem, the adjacent streets could not actually maintain, I think then we're looking at the railway land. I think the railway land could be converted to a car park, and park and ride facilities could be extended to bring people from the car park to the central square. This park and ride facility does exist in a number of other cities, and there may be a number of combinations that could actually apply here. Should the expected increase in the population of Palmerston North over the years get to a point where that particular mode of transport from the railway land would not be sufficient, would not work properly, I think an alternative then might well be the construction of more sophisticated means. I would suggest escalators at the railway land and escalators at the central square, connected to a motorised, overhead, sealed walkway. It would be a mechanicalized walkway, and people could go in either direction. I think that would be something that may be in the future, but would depend largely upon population growth and so on. Now, I believe the IRA provided the incentive and made it happen in Belfast. We don't have that incentive here, thankfully. But people are resistant to change. They take the argument, oh, it's not broke, why fix it? But you will not have progress without change. And I think that that's what's needed. Once when discussing with a friend, how do you encourage people to do something radical and change? And the answer I got was a simple one. If you provide a green branch, the singing bird will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Councillors, are there any questions? Oh, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Noel, for your submission. Just interested your proposals for sort of parking around the city centre, some of those landing on some quite possibly contentious pieces of land. I just wondered, it seemed like quite a few of your solutions were oriented towards sort of surface level car parks, and just wanted to know if you had views on the value of surface level car parks versus parking buildings that could actually have a smaller footprint on the land.
Well, I don't know. I would really think that removing cars from the city centre is really probably the prime move. This would mean, I think, and would head that way anyway, because I'm sure in the future it'll only be electric vehicles that will be allowed anywhere near the city centre. So I'm not really convinced that off-street car parking in any way is what I would be looking at. I'd want to take the car parking away from the city centre to the suburb, and then have park and ride or more sophisticated means of moving people from A to B.
Right, thank you for clarifying, Madam Chair.
Question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Noel, for coming in and talk to us. Look, just in terms of if we remove car parks from the CBD, with an ageing population, how would you feel about perhaps an EV shuttle, which has been brought up by one other submitter? Like an electric vehicle shuttle to move people around the CBD?
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't have an answer to that. Would you mind repeating it for me, please?
Yeah, sorry. Another submitter talked about an electric vehicle shuttle for around the CBD to move people using the CBD around move them around the CBD.
Yep.
So have you thought of that in terms of solution?
No, I hadn't. I've just had the taxis would be permitted into the CBD because people with mobilities or disabilities would not be able to use normal transport and public transport, but I was not considering a sort of a shuttle service around the CBD. I would rely on taxis to provide that service.
Great, thank you, Noel. Cheers.
No, that concludes the questions, so thank you for your submission today.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite Eric Constantine, submission number 127.
Madam Chair, councillors, I'll try and keep this very short. I'm sure you've got more important things to do. I was very disappointed with parts of the draft plan, in particular the representation of the rates, which I found devious and dishonest. Council added a fixed charge to the variable one. They illustrated the fixed charges as $802 when in fact they should be $1,302. This meant that there was an actual $116 increase in the fixed charge, or a 9.78% increase. This is extremely detrimental to low-value homeowners and the low-income people. The variable rate, which was concealed within those figures, rose by approximately 4.48%, which is extremely beneficial to high-value properties and the wealthy people. By doing this, it's hidden the trend in the rates, which has trended to a flatter rate, a much flatter rate. And I've indicated that on page 3, which councillors can read at their leisure. The second point I'd like to make is that this morning I went into the local library, came across a supporting information book. This one is the 2018-2021, but it's practically identical to the present one of 21-31. This is what I received. An exercise in garbage and total waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. A question firstly from me. On the second page of your submission, towards the partway down that page, you talk about that you would support any suggestions to reduce the proposed rates through programs deemed unnecessary or extravagant. I guess I'm interested to understand if you can identify programs that are in the plan that you feel are unnecessary or extravagant.
I felt my initial position was that a number of these programs were not really essential in the present circumstances. And I'm talking about the pandemic and the effect on unemployment and wages and incomes. My view is that we should try and, or council should try and reduce the rates as far as possible. I mean, some of these, I believe, are not really necessary, to be quite honest, but to go into detail, I really couldn't do that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Over here, Eric.
I've lost the track.
Yeah, no, that's right. I'm hiding in the corner. Thank you for your submission, and thank you for your repeated submissions on fairness of rates, which I appreciate. When you looked at the makeup of the rates this year, you did notice that the uniform annual general charge had stayed the same?
Yes, I did.
So when you're referring to an increase in the fixed rate, you're referring to the increased charges for water, wastewater, recycling? Is that what you're referring to?
That is correct. But the 500 UAGC is, I consider, a fixed charge, although it can change. The others, same as the other ones can. So it is a fixed charge, the $500.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But when you were talking about the fixed charges increasing,
Yeah.
you were referring to the, I'm just checking what you were referring to.
I'm adding the 500 to all the other charges.
To the other ones, yeah, okay. So when you said that you felt it was deceptive, the way that had been presented.
That's correct.
Was that because we had referred to an overall rates increase as opposed to dividing it up between the fixed and the variable?
No, it's the way you added a fixed charge to the variable charge, which is ridiculous. A fixed charge is a fixed charge, and it should have gone in the box of fixed charges. Whereas you put $802 in the fixed charges, it should read $1,302.
Right, so that was the point that you felt was misleading.
It is misleading because it conceals the council's efforts to trend the rates downwards, and it places additional costs on the more vulnerable sectors of the city by hiding this.
Yes, I mean, well, I won't argue about intention because I think
fair
that might be hard to prove. But I take your point. So what would you like to see going forward?
Well, simply what they've done in that document, they've itemised them correctly in the 2021-31 document.
Right.
Supporting information.
In the supporting information,
This is what I received, which is completely misleading.
And what are you referring to there that's misleading?
This is the information on the draft annual plan, which is comparable to that. I mean, that's ridiculous. There were 38 blank A4 pages in full colour.
Oh, right, yeah, that one. Yep, okay.
And there was numerous other pictures and so on, totally unnecessary. I mean, they're not in that. They needn't be in this. This is showmanship. It's ridiculous. Look at it. Complete waste. And who's going to pay for it? Not the councillors. It'll be those that can hardly afford it.
I think that's a fair point, well made, but you're happy with the way it's presented in the supporting information anyway? Is that what you're saying?
That is my supporting information, not that.
Okay.
I'm simply comparing what councillors released. I don't know when they released this, but that's what they sent me.
Right, okay.
I mean, there's no comparison, is there?
No, although that's fine. I think you've answered what I wanted to know, which was how you wanted us to present it. So the document in your left hand is how you like it to be presented.
What's in here is the normal presentation
Yeah.
of the rating system
Yeah.
and the rates. That.
Yeah.
That and that. But that was totally, it was dishonest. Well, the way I can describe it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No more questions from councillors? That concludes the questions. So thank you, Eric, for your submission, and that'll be considered along with other submissions on the 9th of June.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to invite Robert Colson, submission number 313.
Madam Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to present to you. You will have heard from two members of Manawatu Canoe Polo supporting the establishment of an aquatic centre and new canoe polo courts. The sport is growing rapidly with clubs emerging around New Zealand. Within the Manawatu, we're seeing continued growth in the sport with indoor facilities being fully utilised. As a club, we run an intermediate program for year 7 and 8 students, which this year has attracted 100 players. Currently, we book Freiburg pool out every day of the week from 7 to 9:30 p.m, except Friday and Saturday. And on average, we're paying $35,000 per year for indoor pools. I think also that we're the only sport in the Manawatu that has an executive office based in Palmerston North. And interestingly, currently 35 to 38% of the world's players come from our region. Manawatu Kiwi Canoe Polo fully supports the establishment of an aquatic centre, as like other groups we are short on pool space for our players. It would mean that we could continue to expand the sport through the winter and teach many players water skills that will stay with them for their life. We would like to see the facility being for sporting codes rather than simply a leisure centre, which would take the pressure off the other facilities in Palmerston North. Ideally, a 10-lane, 50-metre pool would allow us to run 2 courts across the pool. This, I believe, would allow us to attract national competitions that we currently run at the Kilburnie Pool in Wellington. We're also keen to establish an outdoor facility. The lagoon is the current location where we practice and play during the summer period. The training period extends right through until May on the lagoon as National League runs through to this weekend. The lagoon has become problematic for the club with its varying water levels, which when it is low, some players hit the bottom when they roll, and issues around water quality after rainfall with significant rises in E. coli levels. This means practices are suspended. Avian botulism is also a big summer issue that we must contend with. Whilst the lagoon is a beautiful setting for canoe polo, the issues identified would need to be addressed for us to be able to move further forward nationally. Hawke's Bay has invested in a purpose facility which is multi-purpose and can be used by triathlon and outdoor swimmers. As a club, we're not looking for an exclusive facility, but one that can be shared by different groups. Because of the Hawke's Bay facility, we're losing competition that we have held here locally. We've lost training camps for the world's players, and there are a number of schools around New Zealand that will not allow their team to play on the lagoon due to the risk of water quality issues, which means that the secondary school competition has now been lost to the Hawke's Bay. We have our main club competition, the Aotearoa Cup in February, which I know a number of councillors have attended. But to give you an idea, it attracts 60 teams from around New Zealand, meaning 480 players. And with spectators, it is usually around 1,200 to 1,500 people at the event. As a club, we hold our breath every year that the water level remains high enough and that it does not rain before the event. Our alternate, if either of those issues, would be to locate to the Hawke's Bay facility. Costs for the facility would need to be assessed, and we acknowledge that as a club, we would need to be financially involved in fundraising to assist in the creation of the facility. The Hawke's Bay facility has cost $750,000, excluding land costs, but I believe there is a significant part of that cost in toilets and changing facilities which are used by other park users. My own experience in establishing a pond that is big enough for a single court would be a cost of around $40,000 to $50,000 for that single court. The World Cup, we have an opportunity to host the World Cup in the future. Ideally, 2028 would be a likely date. There are 75 plus countries that now play canoe polo. Not all these countries would qualify to attend a World Cup. New Zealand has been asked in the past to host a World Cup, but we haven't done so yet. We would be hosting 72 teams and would require a facility that would have 4 competition courts and potentially 4 warm-up courts, although the requirement is for 8 goals on warm-up, which could be put in a smaller area. That would mean a total of 576 players plus coaches and support staff as well as supporters. Typically when we travel to Europe for a competition, most families also travel with their player and then tour around the countries. We would expect the same here. This would certainly put Palmy on the map and offer a good tourism opportunity. I would expect that such an event would bring in between $1.5 and $2 million into the local economy during the competition. I guess in conclusion, we would like to see the aquatic centre cater for an outdoor component of canoe polo and other sporting codes that would utilise it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. We do have a question, but could you just perhaps pull one of the microphones a bit closer? That would be great. Question from Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, did I hear correctly, 40 to 50,000?
Yes.
As an investment for an outdoor court. Was that?
That was a court that we've actually put on our private property.
Okay.
So I think there was $16,000 for the lining, and the rest was earthworks.
And that's a polo.
That's
court.
a polo-sized court. One polo-sized court.
Okay. That's interesting. Because the only other figure I had as a comparison from the Hastings development was more in the vicinity of 32 for an indoor aquatic centre and 19 for the outdoor facilities, but I haven't got the split on that. But that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Robert. And a very familiar refrain around this table this week has been aquatic facilities. I suppose a question that hasn't really been asked, though, yet, and I'd be interested in your views and if you know the views of others, it's not really been explicit in any of the submissions to date as to whether the view is that this needs to be met through additional spending from council, or whether there's a view that if we needed to substitute, that you'd be promoting a substitution of some other major activity that council's got on the cards to enable a truly an aquatics facility that really meets the range of demands that we've heard.
Yep. Yeah, no, clearly any aquatic facility is going to be a major item. I guess the view would be that it would be looking at probably additional funding rather than asking for something else to be dropped. But I think one of the ways forward, once assuming that there's an investigation undertaken, that a community group or a users group be formed to actually start to nut out what does need to happen. I think a number of the clubs, such as ours, and probably some of the swimming clubs, do have quite a bit of power in fundraising, and especially with people like the Lotteries Commission and various other funding opportunities around New Zealand. And I think what we need to do is look at that collaboratively.
Thank you for that perspective, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Robert. Just a question following on from your final comment just then. I guess in the past when we've had sporting codes come to us requesting facilities, there's often been a partnership arrangement where council might put in a third or more, a third fundraise and a third from a code. And I wondered what capacity you feel that that you could take on regarding a facility that would meet your needs, possibly purpose-built, that kind of thing, if it was in conjunction with other codes as well?
I think that there's probably two parts to that question, because the first part is the aquatic centre, and we're looking at 30 plus million, maybe 40 million. I'm not sure of the number, but it's a big number. I think in relative terms that the sporting codes are probably potentially a more minor contributor to that, just because of the size of the budget. But that's something that needs to be explored. I know in the early days with raising money for the Rainbow Stadium, there was a significant contribution from people around the wider Manawatu into that facility. If we're looking at the canoe polo courts, I haven't spoken with the triathlon club or other users, but I'm sure that we would be looking at trying to contribute a substantial amount to that facility if we could.
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Robert. That concludes questions, and thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome members of the Papaioa Pacifica Community Trust and invite Sanlo Leovai and Ivor Kaisami to make your submission. Thank you. Submission number 559. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor, councillors, and senior staff of Palmerston North City Council. I would like to also acknowledge at this point in time Rangitane o Mana Whenua, and especially my leaders of Pacific communities who are here to represent our Pacifica families. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present our submission further to our written submission that was sent in. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the long partnership that PNCCM had with the Papaya Pacific Community Trust and all the support that have been rendered over the many years of our partnership. In as far as the 10-year plan, I've had a look through the document, and I want to commend those who have been involved, particularly in support for housing issue, which is a major issue for Pacific families. I want to acknowledge the continuing program supporting Sports Manawatu, enabling children from low-income families to be able to participate and continue in their sports interests. Despite the difficult economic climate, I also like the increasing focus on ensuring that our city continue to have the infrastructure to support the growing demands of our community, and at the same time not losing track of the importance of ensuring sustainability. So I just want to make those comments at this point in time. Our presentation, this is the first time for Pacific Papaya community to be sitting at this honorable table, so it's an opportunity for us to just provide some profile context of the work that we do. So the context of PPCT, our vision and strategy for supporting our community, the rationale, and also the recommendations for our submission. This is a great thing about technology. It doesn't work when we need it. Anyway, the vision of PPCT is to develop an empowered, resilient, and thriving Pacific community here, not only in Palmerston North, but a wider Manawatu region. Our key values, amongst others, include the importance of inclusivity, as well as embracing the many diverse Pacifica groups that we do have. Our work at PPCT is guided under our Pacifica Strategic Planning Framework and has 5 strategic areas: language and culture, which is an important part of our families and community, health and well-being, education and training, economic enterprise, engagement and governance. Okay, so PPCT is a charitable status representing all the member countries here in Palmerston North. In light of growing Kiribati and Watuma community, we also aim to embrace them as part of our Pacific families here. We're very fortunate to have been leased the facility at Pearl Brown Park, which have been the hub of Pacifica over the many 15 years. Our works or programs, I must note at this point in time, not only encompasses families here in Palmerston North, but also includes families in the wider Manawatu region, Horowhenua, Fielding, Rangitane, as well as Whanganui. I want to acknowledge our valued development partners, of which Council is an important and integral one. We have been working closely over the years with Think Hauora, Central PHO, Pacifica Futures post-COVID, and we have an exciting future moving ahead with Pacifica Futures for our families. Te Aroha Noa, we continue to establish strategic relationship with Massey University, who have kindly sponsored a number of our learning hubs. Post-COVID, we have also been able to receive substantial funding support from the Ministry of Pacific People, Ministry of Education, MSD, as well as Internal Affairs. Currently, we have 3 funding agreements with government departments. So I acknowledge all those that have been an integral part of our work. Now, the rationale for what we are proposing at our submission this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, has been a significant growth in Pacifica population here in Palmerston North, in addition to the wider Manawatu region. Subsequently, there has also been a significant growth in the demand for and the scope of PPCT work, transitioning from a voluntary non-government organizations to a service provider, especially post-COVID. And the third point is there's a need for fit-for-purpose community center with the capacity to meet the diverse needs of Pacifica families and community, in addition to other non-Pacifica groups that are frequent users of the Pacifica Center. I guess the chart here just provides evidence of the growth in the population of Pacifica people here in the Manawatu region. Very notably, if you look at 2013 to 18, there has been a sudden spike, and I'm confident that if the 2020-2021 data is released, there's a sudden push for many of our families to move away from big cities to a lovely city like Palmerston North. Second one, as I've noted before, there's been significant growth in the demand for an increase in work of PPCT in language and culture, health and well-being. And I've shared some of the images of some of the programs that we offer. The Matua Olo program, which provides an important service and support for the elderly in our community. Pacifica have a young and youthful population, and hence a lot of our focus is on ensuring that we provide a safe environment where our students are learning on top of what they receive at schooling. At this point in time, as I mentioned before, we're in the final stage of negotiating a contract with Pacific Future, which is a final order provider not only for Palmerston North, but here in Palmerston North. And that will require substantial funding for staff and for services. We'll reach out to a wider families, supplementing the current services available in our city. Need for fit for purpose. If we look at our population 20 years ago, and we have still been operating in the Pacifica Center, and given the increase in population, our community has outgrown the current capacity of the hall, and that's the basis of one of our submissions. And these are typical activities that are happening at the hall each week. The learning hub for our children, Parents Talanoa series to empower parents to become champions of our children's learning. The Matua Olo program. In addition to that, we host the Myanmar Fellowship Group, Iwi Tapu, Maori organization, and 2 Muslim fellowships. In addition to language nest classes, the purchase of 30 devices following COVID, and given the digital divide that hinders access by our families to educational opportunities as well as services. So in light of these, this is one of the reasons why we are putting forward to Council the importance of investing in increasing the capacity of the hall. So in short, ladies and gentlemen, the recommendations we're putting forth that PNCC incorporate investment in expansion of the Pacific Center as part of its infrastructure investment program in the next 10-year plan. I've also had a look at some of the protocols in the plan, and this alignment is the things that we're asking with what's in the document. Number 2, that a council member be assigned the responsibility of being the official representative and advocate for Pacifica people in council to ensure that the interest and development aspirations of our families and communities are being effectively communicated. Not only that, it enables council to be able to know firsthand what is happening within our community. In addition to that, Madam Chair, PNCC, we ask that PNCC support the appointment of a Pacifica liaison person that is currently vacant. I think that's really important. Lastly, that in light of the contribution of Pacific community to our city and PNCC vision of celebrating our diversity, we appreciate the support that's currently in place for cultures, celebrating cultures, but we ask if that can continue, if not increase, so that our New Zealand-born Pacific youth can be able to enjoy our Pacific cultures. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for making time to hear our submission. Flawley.
Thank you. We do have one question from Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sunny and Iva, for coming in today. there's a lot in there. I'm gonna focus in on number 2 that you've mentioned in there at the moment. So you do have a voice on the council at the moment. It currently is me. But I'm just wondering, in terms of this, are you trying to get more focus on Pacifica issues in council through something like a portfolio, or are you wanting a councillor appointed to one of your committees, or are you thinking of something else?
I think you can, thank you, Councillor, for the question. I think what we're looking at is someone of the official capacity to be the official mouthpiece and voice for our communities. I think we're also very keen to have the incumbent sit in our board meetings so that, we ensure that there is two-way communication between what's happening at PPCT and council.
Okay, so I'm just trying to, so in terms of that, because of the, so you're wanting the Pacifica advisor, which is a role that the CE looks after, but you're also wanting are you wanting a council-appointed representative to your committee? Is that what you're looking for? Similar to the thing along the lines of Manawatu, Multicultural Council or Safety Advisory Board or that kind of thing?
That is correct, Councillor.
Okay, all right, and that's to help improve Pacifica issues at governance level.
Most definitely. We strongly believe that if Pacifica is not sitting around the table, we'll end up on the menu. So I think that's the basis of our argument. We want someone who can advocate strongly and fight for our families and community.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes your time. Thank you, Sanloa and Ivor. Thank you for your submission, and that will be considered by councillors on the 9th of June as a part of their deliberations. Okay. So, councillors, we're going to break for an afternoon tea break now, and we'll be coming back here at 3:05. And just to those that are here in the gallery, also there's a cuppa out in the foyer for you as well, if you'd like one.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. We've got Pete Wells. My name's Shane Telfer from 102 Mountain Bike Club, chairman and chairperson. And Pete Wells, who is our treasurer, membership secretary, and leads our Arapuki endeavours. And we've got Russell Brebner here from the Arapuki group as well. Apologies for getting your name wrong at the start. Pete's going to lead off.
Right, well, thank you guys for the opportunity to present to your 10-year plan. I'm just going to summarise a few points in brief. Shane's done the introduction. So first, we'd like to thank you for the resources we received directly from Arapuki and the resources you put into the river trails and the other stuff that we do alongside you in the community. So in summary today, we're submitting for a continuation of $20,000 towards our new mountain bike trails at Arapuki, an increase over time for our current mountain bike maintenance budget, which currently sits at $30,000. We're submitting to increase that to $45,000 over time, and a one-off $30,000 contribution to a shelter and amenities in the Kutawara car park. And we're looking for your continued support for mountain bike opportunities within the city and the Titiapiti Gorge. As some of you are new, I just want to summarise what investment has been put into Arapuki with us managing. So you guys have, since 2018, you guys have contributed $159,000. We've raised $473,000, sponsorship of $87,000, our own resources, cash contributions from the club, $22,000, and estimated volunteers time at $180,000. So I just want to set the scene because a lot of you people may not have known us from the submissions over the last 10 years. Oh, and look, I think that we've put about 1.5 million worth of resources into Arapuki since 2012. So in brief, we have a new trail plan. We're always looking to put new trails in. It's all planned. We try and make it so that we cover all the different riding styles that are suited to terrain. We're currently building an iconic trail, which is not for the adventure of riding it, it's for the embracing the environment. And then we've got a children's loop, and then we've got lots of other trails planned with varying things. For example, the recreational trail has got a budget of about $200,000. We've funded most of that to date. Maintenance. Now, mountain bike trails wear tyres over them all the time, and it's very important that you try and keep the trails in the condition that you built them for safety and for enjoyment. We've recently built a lot of jumps trails. These are full-on things. People come from all around New Zealand to ride them, but they have to be maintained for safety. So that's why we're saying that over time, with the extra building, we're going to need more money for maintenance. Kahutawara car park amenities. The capital budget for Arapuki has been huge over a few years from you guys, but it has finished, the capital development. We believe that there's one thing that's missed the cut, and that's a shelter and amenities in the Kahutawara car park. You've built a huge car park for car parking, which is often full, but we would like some shelters, we'd like bike washes, some trails. We've talked to iwi, we've got some plans of telling stories about the region. The walking signage is reasonably poor in information, so this is a shared proposal with walkers and all users of the park, so we'd like a contribution there. We're saying $30,000. We'll guarantee you 10, but our track record would show you our goal is to earn a lot more from that, and it will be investment over time. Kahutawara Road is a problem. We're expecting a speed change coming up, which will be great. But we would ask that if we could get the maintenance continued as a minimum, more would be good. And if over time there was a capital allocation, so we could just pick off some of the blind spots where we know there are problem areas. I'm also aware as a farmer that there's legislation that if land gets subdivided next to stream, there's an opportunity to make a riparian right. We believe that it would be great if we could have a shared biking walking trail as far up Kahutawara stream as possible. So we'd be asking if there's any subdivisions along the stream, if those opportunities to create that amenity area be taken up, please. Trails in the city, we'd love some exposure to the hilly areas around Summerhill and Massey, but we do appreciate the budget allocations we're getting for work along through the, what's it called? It's called Program 752, the Manawatu River Project. You are doing some good stuff with us there, so we appreciate that. We've also been working for some time with the Gorge Governance Group and your Jeff Baker on opportunities in Te Apiti. We are hitting some obstacles with DOC. We've had a budget of $10,000 to spend on a trail we've had on Woodville side. We're still struggling to get a community agreement signed after 2 years, so we may need some high-level help there. We've also got some big plans for some iconic trails and things. We've talked to iwi, we've talked to a lot of people, but we're hitting some obstacles there. So just a note that we may look for some high-level help there along the way. Now I'd like to hand over to Shane, who's just going to give you a few slides and tell you a bit about us.
Right, so just following up on what Pete said, this is sort of a conceptual design for the shelter, so we're requesting an additional $30,000 allocation, and it will deliver an asset that's valued at around $44,000, so contributions will come from the club and from volunteer input as well. And so a good deal of thought has gone into the planning of this, and it's going to be suitable for all users of the park, so that's the walkers, Te Araroa, and also our mountain bike communities. It's going to be great for events and be a real focal point for our activities. So that is there in our budget. So just to re-emphasise what we're requesting, the allocation that's been made in the draft 10-year plan, we're very happy with. So excuse me, we'd just support the continuation of that allocation, and then because we've got an increased length in our trails, so we're up to about 35k at the moment, and we'll be heading beyond 40 kilometres soon, so the pressure on maintenance is very high, and so we're requesting that we just get an additional allocation as put forward in our submission, and then it's just one-off funding in the next financial year of $30,000 to build this shelter and the amenities that go with that. So I'll just sort of highlight a couple of aspects that we'll be working on. We're very keen on placemaking at the moment, and so we can just highlighting here, so a webcam that we've got up and running. Up on the top left, you can see a shelter that we've built together with the council, and that's proving to be very popular. So, and our other hubs and around placemaking. So, what I wanted to emphasise here was that the club is working at Arapuki at a very professional level. I think delivering some really important assets for the community, and so we can continue that. And we would like your support for this future proposed shelter. So we'll leave it there. I see that we're into the amber, so we'll leave it there for questions. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we do have a question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Shane and team. Could you just give us a little bit of insight into the overall financial position of the club?
Very strong. So we've got retained funds. Do you want numbers? Yeah. So around...
Can I do this?
Yeah, you're best.
So effectively we have retained funds of around 30,000, which has been made up over the year. Our balance sheet shows more because we often carry a lot of grant money over for the year. But technically we're between 30 to 40,000 with a membership of 900.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes questions. So thank you very much for your submission. That'll be considered as part of the deliberations on the 9th of June.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And just welcome to all of you who have joined us after afternoon tea. I'm Karen Naylor. And just to go over the system that we've got here for those who may not be familiar with it, we've got a traffic light system. Each submitter has 10 minutes, and there's 7 minutes on the green light, two minutes on the orange and 1 on the red. And I would encourage you to keep your presentation with allowing enough time for councillors to also ask questions within that 10-minute period. So the next submitter is David Crowley, submission number 659. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I just want to say thank you very much for taking all the time to not only to listen to our submission, but all those submissions that have gone prior. I understand that that would be certainly some work toll in front of you. So, before I introduce myself, I just want to, I expect that obviously our submission has been read. I'm just going to give you a little brief overview on the way I see things, and then I'd certainly be welcoming questions coming forward. Firstly, my name's David Crowley, a local business owner, always lived here and always intend living here too, just for clarity. So very passionate about what goes on in this community. And one of the things why I'm here is that I represent the Te Manawa Arts Society as their chair. And the reason for our submission is that it's clear to us that the words art gallery have been omitted from the 10-year plan. Now that is something that we would like included, because if it's not actually included, it actually doesn't get any attention or notice or curiosity of what does actually this contribute to our community. I am very respectful that we do not have unlimited resources. As the councillors here, that you are governors to making sure that you're spending the right money, but I'm here to give you some easy runs on the board. I'm not here asking for money, but I am asking you to pay attention to actually what's going on within the art community, because it has some real benefits to not only our local community, but also nationally as well. I want to give you the heads up of the resource. We've got 100 metres down the road here, heading due south. And the art gallery itself has just recently won some significant recognition as an enduring architecture award last week, and thank you for those who attended last week to that. It's fit for purpose as an art gallery. It's strong. Its earthquake strength is all good to go. I would say though there is some deferred maintenance on there that does need to be caught up. However, the reality is that in behind those four walls there, tucked away into a back corner, there's a concrete bunker there that houses over $20 million worth of art. Just let me say that again, $20 million worth of art. And the reality is that that's not been seen enough. And I'm not sure how many of you had that chance to actually get down there and have a poke around in those racks there, but this is something, a really significant asset at your disposal. The reality is that this is one of New Zealand's regional best collections that is out there. And we're really hoping that you see this as now an opportunity to actually get this out and showcase it. We've got a lot of situations in New Zealand where people are looking for attractions to come to, not only as regional visitors, but also here locally as well. This should be something here that you consider here about how do we get this out there. In our submission there, we've got a number of points there. Number 8 in particular is built around expectations. So what we're asking for you as councillors is to set the expectations out there to the Te Manawa Trust, Te Manawa Museum Trust, of actually how are we actually managing this resource here? How are we going to get the most out of it? And how are we actually going to generate some, not only some revenue from bringing more people into this environment, but how do we also communicate this within our own community and add value as well? So my final statement on this here is, before we get into question time, is councillors, please get curious about what's in the cupboards next door there. There is a lot of value here. This is a point of difference that you should be considering about what you do with it. It doesn't cost you anything. As of today, it doesn't matter if 5 people go through that museum or 100,000, it still costs you the same amount to run it. Why not have that place full? Why not have that place actually running through some really exciting, not only national exhibitions, but there's also international exhibitions that are available. Why not put it up with other leading regional art galleries like the Sargent, like the Aratoi and the Pātaka down also in Porirua. These guys are leading the charge, and the reality is we've got an asset down there that's not being utilised well enough. So please have a look through our submission. Again, I'm not here on the look for money, but I'm asking you to pay attention and set some expectations there for the Trust as well about how they're actually going to deliver. I think I'll leave it at that. I'd like some questions.
Thank you, David. There are some questions there for you, firstly from the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David. Well done on getting the building acknowledged in that New Zealand Architects Heritage Awards. I think that's another feather in the cap. I'd say yes. I'd say, not speaking on probably behalf of my colleagues, but yes, we're certainly curious about what's down there. So yeah, I agree. It should be maximised as much as it can. Could I just ask? So you're specifically asking for art to be recognised in the SOE for Te Manawa? Is that what you're?
Sorry, your question again? Are
So the statement of expectation that, because everything that we do is through Te Manawa,
yep,
which of course you're linked to, but you're wanting art to be specifically recognised.
Yes, and also the gallery itself as well. That this is actually a significant asset for the region here. And then if we get these things put in place and actually out in the open, then people start taking notice, and then we're starting to look at expectations. What are these numbers coming through the art gallery? How can we leverage on this to actually double this number? What other exhibitions can we place? What other resources can actually Te Manawa Trust actually put in place to actually build this thing?
So you're actually wanting numbers counted as well?
Well, I think the numbers are being counted.
I think they're overall counted, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and there is numbers also that are based around other different regions as well. And you'll find that our per head per capita attendance rate in the Manawatu is well lower than all other regions. And that's because we just don't have enough energy and passion running in there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regards to, I've recently visited the wildlife exhibition, and what struck me is that the venue itself, apart from that exhibition, seems quite barren. And would it be fair to say that there's opportunity to display more of the $20 million worth of art across the walls and the like? What's displayed now, is that the expectation without offence? Can I understand what should be displayed and how much? And
these are good questions for the Trust, but yes, you would get our support on that. I think that certainly is our focus here, is to, there's so many people that love art. We've got such a fantastic building there that's got all this wall space. I think we need to ask some more questions, and we need leverage from you guys to ask for more, because that building is fantastically fit for purpose. Let's get it out there. Let's get it turning over. Monthly would be ideal, but maybe that's not realistic under the current resourcing. So maybe resources need to be looked at.
With the past, the society or the Art Society has had, some tension, with Te Manawa, with their operation. How would you describe the relationship currently now?
Yeah, thank you, Vaughan. Yeah, I certainly read that submission that came from Andy. That the word tension, I think, is two parts to it. I think the first one is the word tension could be seen as negative, and I know that there has been some history that hasn't always been constructive. But I can give you assurance from our committee, which most of you is behind me, is very positive about the way we're moving forward. And that is, we very much see the role here as supporting Andy and his team, and we're only looking forward, not backwards. The other part of tension, the way I probably see the way that Andy was talking about that is the tension for the allocation of resources. I think Te Manawa, as much as they have over $3 million operating budget, there is always that question mark about where you're going to put your first dollar to get your best bang for. And I think they're probably stretched. And I think that tension that they use, the word tension, is about, well, yes, we're asking for more art to be out there, and because it's great for the community, it's great for the economy, why wouldn't we? But also they have other balancing operations that they've got to do to make it for everybody.
Thank
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. It's very.
Question from the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David. I've just got a question probably following on from the Mayor's questions around the statement of expectations. So you've got two comments in your point 8. One of them's around public displays, and I think you've just kind of alluded to perhaps monthly in terms of a turnover. I'm just trying to understand, with the delivery of public events, what regular would mean to you, because I mean twice a year could be regular if it's twice a year every year, but whether it's, have you got a figure of what you'd ideally like to see?
I can only draw on experience from other galleries, and I know there is a lot of time that goes in behind the scenes to get these exhibitions up on the go. But most galleries, really successful galleries may have operated on a monthly turnover of stuff, but that could be really quite high. I think probably every 2 months would be probably 2 or 3 months would be probably a correct allocation of resources. But that's really up to Manawa to decide that, but we'd like to see it increase so we can see the art.
Okay, but when you say your events, you're talking about a launch for the exhibition, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your submission. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Bob Lissington, submission number 494.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to come and speak. I'm not here on behalf of any group or organisation. I'm here on behalf of the city and the citizens, and hoping to get you to think with some new ideas and some innovation that might make the city a more exciting place. First, my submission's straightforward, very simple. I'm sorry it's not 15 pages, but I think the city has to grow, and it's that growth that will fund the city going forward and be able to afford all the wonderful things and ideas that we want to do. And to do that, we have to make it more attractive to attract businesses here. And I'm encouraging you to think about, and how can we do that? How can we link with the business community? How can we link with the intelligence, the high capital intelligence that we have here in the city? Why don't we have a brain trust that can look at ideas that come forward and problems? So you can say to businesses, let's all get our collective minds on this problem and see if we can come up with some creative solutions. Because creative solutions can come from many directions. It doesn't have to be from the business sector. It could come from the agricultural sector, the health sector, the education sector. There are so many ways that we can cross-fertilise our imaginations. And for instance, to encourage businesses here, let's say, is it possible to give them a 50% rate rebate for the first 5 years if they're a certain size? If they're even bigger, let's give them 10 years. Get the people here, get the businesses here, get the thing growing. And to do that, you need the land, the commercial land, the residential land, so that's all basically happening. We have a wonderful city here, but we sometimes forget it. So I'm just saying, look at there, what's our talent, how can we use that, and how do we actually get the place moving? Can we be the fastest, the city with the fastest consent process? Can we take down the barriers? Can we make it easier? Before the city had a thing, easy living, a good place to be here. Let's make it that place that we want to be proud of. Right, so that's the last bit. I'm now going to ask you if you'd like to come on a journey with me. And I know that councillors sit on their backsides for a long time, and I'd encourage you to stand and exercise, because the blood will flow, hopefully, to your brain. So I'm going to stand, and if you'd like to stand as well, just have a stretch. We'll get the group. Right, thank you. So I'm going to take you for a journey on our city. So what I'm asking you to do is now look at this city that I've just gone around in the last week and had a look at with fresh eyes. The trouble is sometimes when we're thinking, we go past everything and we see the same thing day after day, and we don't open our eyes to what those possibilities are actually out there. In our street, this is our streets, there's a 2-inch gap in our footpaths. Now there are people with bad eyesight and disabilities and prams that have trouble in our streets. They're easily fixed. It's not a big job, it just needs to be fixed. Our trees are sad. Here's a street where the trees have outgrown their usefulness. What we should be doing is planting new trees alongside those, so that when we take these ones down, we've got at some point there will be a carbon sink that they'll take in our city's trees. We need to be thinking of that. This tree is at the bottom of Ruahine Street. That branch that I've highlighted has been dead for at least 4 years. It's not that difficult to chop that branch. I'd take my chainsaw down and do it, but I'd probably get told off. Why aren't we planting native trees in our city? Bring the birds back. If we can't do that, let's plant fruit trees so that the neighbourhoods can benefit from those trees. This is the new, do you recognise where it is? It's a new footbridge. That's my shoe. It disappears 3 or 4 inches in that. That's only newly laid. Why is it in such bad condition that you can't walk across it without breaking your ankle? This is a jointly owned public amenity. That's impressive. What are the visitors? What do you think of that? This is our cemetery. My family came here in 1874, and they were in that cemetery. And give you credit, they have just hacked back the trees, but the compost, the leaf compost, is at least 6 inches deep. That is not 1 or 2 years worth of leaves. Bit sad. That little hole, if you leave it, it will grow. And those patches have been there for a long time. Can you read that sign? You see that bump in the roads? Now, hopefully I can get this to work. I came down Featherston Street the other day, and this goes from Rangatiki Street all the way back to Russell Street. At mid-afternoon, the school is out, there's no school kids there. Why is the traffic built up like that? And that's not the only street. There's Ruahine Street, there's Main Street, there are other streets leading into it. We've got what I'm suggesting is let's invest in some expertise on traffic optimisation, whether it's software or expertise. Why don't we have a drone going up and monitoring what's going on and seeing where it is and what we can do? We have to be creative. This is now. What's it going to be like in 10 years' time? It's not going to be impressive. It's not going to be inviting. Right. What I'm saying is we have great resources here. We need to maintain them. We need to be proud of our city. Thank you for your time. Oh, one more thing. I have communicated with the City Council 3 times in the last 3 years, and each time I get a thing saying, we will respond as soon as possible. I'm still waiting for those responses. That needs to be addressed if you want to connect with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. First questions from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Bob, for your submission. I'm speaking from over here.
Sorry, I was looking for you.
I'm just finding a bit of a contradiction in your submission around your first comments around wanting to increase the population of Palmerston North and encourage as many businesses as possible to set up here and so on. And then the second half of your submission where you're talking about congestion on the roads. And I wonder how you think that increasing the population of Palmerston North is going to help the congestion.
Well, it's going to give us the money for the infrastructure. We have been looking for a second bridge for something like 50 years, isn't it? We still haven't got it. Why not? I've been here, ever since I've been a teenager, we've been talking about a second bridge. We still haven't got it. It's not getting the flow through. Where is the traffic coming from? There's a lot coming from Fielding. Why hasn't that link been in there? Why are we congesting around the city? We can have both. You're saying we have to have one or the other. No, we can have both. We need to think creatively. How do we do this? How do we solve these problems? How do we get our collective heads and minds around this to say, how can we get the traffic flow flowing better? It's only going to get worse.
Okay, my second point is you've put up a lot of small faults from the footpaths and the roads there. Have you heard of the Snap Send Solve app? Okay, well...
The Guardian might publicise that, thank you.
So I don't know how many years it is now. We have an app that you can put on your phone. As soon as you see a fault, you take a photo of it and send it to council.
And we get response.
Did you use the app?
No. I use a thing called email.
Okay. Well, all of those small faults are very easy to fix if they're alerted to council. So I'm just asking if you've done that.
I'm asking you, why do the council officers not see these faults? That's what I'm saying, the tired eyes. We see these things, go past them every day. The council staff see these things as well as we do. Why have they not responded? Why do they not see these things?
Thank you. Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Bob. I think one of my questions was around the, you're a bit closer, there it is. That's the app.
Yep.
So...
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And But again, how many people here knew about that? Percentage?
Okay.
Percentage-wise?
So Madam Chair, I just wondered, Bob, where did you send the email? Was it just to the info?
Yeah, info.
Okay, so that obviously would go through to K-Base, which would go to infrastructure. So the infrastructure, we've got infrastructure people here, so I'm sure they'll respond.
Yeah, I'm sure they will now.
I think we can follow that up for you, Bob. But just one further question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Bob, for bringing your concerns to us today. Just wanted to ask some of your earlier parts of the presentation. You're talking about, I guess, your ambitions for the sort of performance of the city, and you talked about things like having the fastest consents and that sort of thing, and just what your views are around balancing sort of speed with other measures like quality.
Same thing, you don't have to sacrifice speed and for quality. That's the challenge, is let's have the quality and speed. Why should we only have one and not the other?
So you'd be committed to both?
What you're saying is it's impossible to do one without the other.
I'm not making a statement, Bob. I'm asking a question.
I'm challenging you there.
And I would just like to know, so what I've heard from you then is that you would like to see us ensure that quality is also maintained.
That's right. And we can do that by looking at your workflow and how you're doing this and how my understanding, some of the stuff is being subcontracted out.
Great, thank you.
And again, keep it local. Can I just, one last point, to fix the footpaths, I don't want to chop the trees down.
Okay, thank you, Bob. That does come to the end of your allotted time. I do apologise that you haven't had a response from your queries, but we can follow that up. Thank you. And next, we have a submission from Matthew, submission number 643. Oh, is Matthew here? Okay. So have we got Harry Lilly? I'd invite Harry. Submission number 560, Creative Sound Society. Welcome.
Kia ora, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to address Council today. We really appreciate any chance to
Excuse
provide
me,
feedback.
could you just perhaps bring the microphone a little bit closer and check that it's on? Thank you.
Yes, it says it's on. Yep. Yeah, we really appreciate any opportunity to have feedback to Council and share our views and work with Council. By way of introduction, I'm Harry Lilly. I'm the manager of the Stomach and Creative Sound Society, and with me is Meredith McKenzie, who is the treasurer for the society. We have submitted a written submission, and I hope you've taken the time to have a read of that. I don't want to go into the absolute specifics of that because we cover some higher level direction and approach issues, and we also get down into some specific issues to address for this 10-year plan. So what I want to do today is just highlight the main points and then open the floor to questions so that if you have anything in particular you'd like to know, we can look at that. So for background, we really value our relationship with PNCC, and I don't think we necessarily get the opportunity to speak and thank you enough for that. We've been working with Council for more than 30 years, and through that relationship we've been able to grow as an organisation to support the music community and to support the wider arts community in Palmerston North. That relationship started in 1988, and I've written in our submission about how great that is and what we've achieved. The main thing I really want to say is through that relationship we have created something completely unique and something that is the envy of other councils and other communities, not only here in New Zealand but around the world. And we are frequently reminded of that when people come to visit us, when we go to visit other people and talk about what we do. So I think Council should be really proud of what we have all achieved, and we should all be looking to consolidate that success, because now's the opportunity not just to come and talk about all the usual sort of stuff, but let's think about how we can make the most of what we already have, and we can really optimise our resources and optimise the reputation that we've already built and our resources that we've already built. So the main points I wanted to address, I think, and we think Creative Sounds, that PNCC should ring fence funding for key arts facilities, so Creative Sound Society and other facilities like Square Edge Community Arts that are currently housed under the strategic priority grants funding allocation. A couple of main reasons for that, and I've gone into depth in our submission on this, but contestable funding really isn't ideal. It doesn't produce good outcomes. There are much better outcomes that we can achieve from secure operational funding, better planning, better implementation, and we're much better placed to respond to the needs of our community when we know what we can do. When we're waiting on tenterhooks, that's a real impediment. Secure operational funding is the greatest challenge for any arts organisation. We're no exception. And like I said, it's crucial to planning, it's crucial to implementation of the goals. I'd like to note that PNCC should be thinking about the need to ensure access to music and culture, arts, those kinds of activities in our city. Too often people face barriers to participating in the arts and culture. The analogy that I've used most often recently has been anywhere is, well, we can all think of somewhere to go kick a ball around after hours in the city, but can you all think of somewhere where you can access art and you can access music activities, cultural activities? The access isn't the same. There are much higher barriers to participation, and that's something that we could address. There's huge value from music and art to our community. We know this, it's well documented. There are great resources that are available for council to use and adopt. And we know that this is really good, and it's going to be key to ensuring the well-being of our community. So we should be looking at that. I'd like to note that maintenance has been addressed in this 10-year plan, especially maintenance of cultural facilities, and we think that's good, but I do think we probably need to go further, and at this stage I don't know that we have enough information about what needs to be done in terms of maintenance for cultural facilities like the region, like the Stomach, and so I think we need to open that conversation and actually look at that and do some work to see whether we really need more money there or what the priorities are, because we all talk about maintenance, but I don't know that we actually know what needs to happen or that we are working with our stakeholders to get the best outcomes there. Similar to that, the council community stage is a real asset. Not every council has a community stage. It's really important. I see that council has put some funding aside to update and maintain the stage, but I wonder why the council hasn't considered just replacing it outright with a more fit-for-purpose solution. It would not cost that much more, and I think there needs to be some conversation and investigation around that, because an investment in that will really pay off in terms of community engagement, community wellbeing, and we can think of a number of examples where there could have been a better solution provided by Palmerston North City Council, but instead we've had to go externally to other regions to hire an equipment in that space. And the last two things I really want to address before questions is we've talked about the agent of change principle in our submission, and I think we're really at a point now where we need to consider as a city what we are doing about inner city intensification and what that's going to mean for inner city activities that are existing, like arts and music and cultural activities. There will be impacts from intensification of activities, more residential development in the city, and if we don't get ahead of that now, we won't have taken advantage of learning from the mistakes of other cities who have messed that up and have done irreparable damage to their arts and cultural facilities. There are music venues around the world that have shut because of development. I don't want to see that happen in this city. I want to see our arts flourish, and we can assure that by making sure that council has an approach to development and ensuring that people who are doing development are responsible for mitigating any adverse effects that might be incurred by encroaching into existing art spaces, existing music space. And finally, we're here. We would like to consult with council more. We think there are really great opportunities for council to engage with us as stakeholders and for other communities, other music and arts and cultural communities to be engaged as stakeholders. We have a lot of knowledge that you can use, and we really want to be part of that conversation so that we can lead towards the best outcomes. And I think I'll leave it there because we've gone into amber and I'm conscious of time.
Thank you. Mary, did you want to add anything?
I guess the only thing I'd add to that, really, just to clarify that we're seen as an arts organisation, and we are indeed, but I think we could also be seen far more as a builder of community, and I know that that's something that all of you value, that building a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of safe place to come to. And it extends beyond our borders, and I know that a lot of the people that we keep in touch with, we're building a community amongst the diaspora of musicians as well, and that's going to have enormous value for Palmerston North as well.
Thank you. I have a question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Harry and Meredith. I take your point about the contestable funding model, and in fact it has come up in other submissions. What would you like to see replace it?
I think we'd like to see a much closer and more direct relationship with council. This relationship has been going on for 33 years now, but we're still stuck in a cycle of, do they like us? Don't they like us? Are they going to fund us? Are they not going to fund us? It's almost like a sense of anxiety. Are we part of the city? Are we valued? Are we in partnership together or not? And I guess that's, as somebody who does suffer from anxiety, that constant state of, why is all my energy having to go into proving that we need to be here?
I absolutely take your point about that. I'm just trying to explore what other model you might have in mind. Is it some kind of contract or
yeah, like
what?
ring-fence funding. So at the moment we have to apply to a contestable fund for our funding, and if we knew that there was a long-standing relationship for funding with the council to achieve particular outcomes in line with a 10-year plan, we could have a 10-year funding agreement, and we could review that from time to time. But long-term funding is key to success, and so.
Yeah, and I think you're right, there are some key organisations, and not just in the arts sector, but across the community with whom we do have a partnership arrangement. So thank you for that aspect of the submission.
And thanks. A question from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And in a similar vein, would a hybrid model be of any use? So if part was contestable and part was fixed or longer term?
I think we're open to examining any kind of other model really at this point, because I think our organisation and many others are reaching the limits of potential under the current model. So to enter into discussion about what we could do differently would be great.
If I could just add to that, the thing that concerns me the most as the Treasurer is it's very easy for us to get capital funding. It's also, so replacing assets is no problem. And we've contributed, thousands of, hundreds of thousands in terms of assets. But getting funding for salaries and funding for core operations, you cannot leverage events and activities and programs if you can't maintain a base of operating. And that operation security is what enables us to leverage all the other activities. So I wouldn't like to see a base operating model that was too low to leverage off, is what I'm saying.
Noted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you both. That concludes your time, and your submission will be considered as a part of the deliberations in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
The next submission is from Rebecca Mudford, submission number 527. Welcome, Rebecca.
Can you get your microphone on? Thanks.
There we go. My name's Rebecca Mudford. I'm the current chairperson of the Bunnythorpe Community Committee and a resident of Bunnythorpe as well for the last 9 or 10 years. Firstly, thank you, councillors, for the work that you continue to do for us, and especially to Councillor, it's Petranas? There's been much debate over that, and Councillor Susie as well. Councillor Beattie. We're all good, we've got this. Totally got this. Thank you for your commitment to our community of Bunnythorpe and your liaisoning that you do with the council, and also your patience with us over the years. It's probably the first time we've come into a submission and not had to talk about a community centre. But we do have something else to talk about. I'm speaking on the first and second point of the community submission, which is regarding the Freight Ring Road and the railway hub, freight hub. I don't have all the facts a lot of people come in with, so I'm going to do this my way. I'm renowned for wearing a lot of hats in our community, so that's what we're doing today. So we're just going to go through them and we will speak on behalf of our community. So, Bunnyfoot residents. There's 650 residents around about in Bunnythorpe. For some of those residents, 24 homes will be demolished, people will be displaced. A lot of that land has been farmed over a century as well, and we've got people who have built homes in the places that the railway hub is going to potentially go and roading's going to go, and people who have built to stay for a very long time because they like Bunnythorpe. They like the quiet rural lifestyle, we all do, that's why we live there, a big part of why we live there, and we don't want to lose people from our community. We're losing our main route to Palmerston North. KiwiRail acknowledges that Railway Road is the main road that Bunnythorpe residents use to get into town, to access their jobs, shops, recreation and other services. Losing this road will increase travel times, it's going to increase fuel usage, and it's also going to push us out to the Manawatu District Council facilities like their libraries because they're actually easier to get to for us, which is a bit of a shame because obviously they don't get our rates. We're going to suffer social severances. The roading cuts right through Bunnythorpe, and the council fails to acknowledge this. You guys have had evidence given to you by numerous people regarding what the actual boundaries of Bunnythorpe is in the Palmerston City Council. This needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be corrected because these roads and this hub are in and through Bunnythorpe. It's going to separate Bunnythorpe into sections that are not easily accessible to each other, and it's essential that we maintain social contact and access to our local facilities, our schools, our shop, our churches, community areas, and it has to be safe and easy to do so for us. Roads need to connect people, not divide communities. Our health is going to be compromised by noise, vibration and air pollution. Annoyance and sleep deprivation due to noise and vibration causes short-term, long-term issues and mental health issues. Diesel exhaust is carcinogenic. It's associated with respiratory illnesses, increased premature death, risk of heart disease, cancer risk, adverse birth outcomes, effects on the immune system, great when you've got COVID coming into the country, and multiple respiratory effects and neurotoxicity, something we don't want. Throw that one away. Bunnythorpe kids, we've got 100 of them, over 100 kids in our region, in our little community. These are the most vulnerable members of our community and they do not have a voice. Well, they do, but they're too little to use it. For us, I will say us being a kid, I'm not a kid, I would like to be a kid, but I'm not. Our health is compromised by noise, vibration and air pollution. Again, annoyance and sleep disturbance causes reading and speech delays in children. Air pollution from diesel causes respiratory conditions, asthma, allergies, immunodeficiency. Again, COVID. Kids aren't immunised. Our access to our community will have barriers. We have a loss of independent mobility. Walking to and from school and play is an important natural way to get exercise for us. Major roading, larger trains and more frequent use of the tracks means we can't walk to school by ourselves. We cannot walk to rally by ourselves. We cannot walk to playgroup twice a week. We cannot walk to the dairy by ourselves to spend our pocket money. We cannot walk to the BMX track by ourselves or to our playgrounds. We cannot walk to the rugby field or our new community centre safely by ourselves anymore. The Bunnyfoot Fire Brigade. These guys are the first point of contact for all of our emergencies, not just fires. If we have medical emergencies, more often than not, our fire brigade is first to the scene and they are the ones that will do CPR and save lives. As Bunnyfoot Fire Brigade, we need full access to every part of Bunnythorpe. We are the backup for other parts of our region. We need to be able to get to those places fast. Our community needs access as well. Our community needs access to the fire station. That is where our defibrillator is. You put roading through, you put large tracks through, that hinders a quick access to that particular facility, and that will result in a potential loss of lives. Bunnyfoot business owners, shop and business owners. Our customers need to have ease of access. We've got a lot of elderly people and a lot of children, and they need to be able to walk safely to the dairy from any part of Bunnythorpe. Our customers need to be safe walking safe walking. For our dairy owner, he will lose revenue as highways take away customers who come through Fielding to Ashurst. It's not safe to have heavily used tracks close to a tavern. If you don't recognise it, alcohol and taverns and railway tracks really do not work well together, and we have lost people to our tracks for that reason. Please do not put extra tracks near our tavern. And mitigating tracks as well by putting overbridges also is not something that would probably work either with a tavern there. Alcohol. And children who throw rocks. Bunnyfoot School. Is that what I got on? Yep. Bunnyfoot School has a struggling role, and they're working very, very hard to improve the reputation of our local school. Putting a railway hub, putting more tracks and putting major roading through our village is not going to help that, because people simply aren't going to send their kids there. Our pupils and staff may suffer health issues, noise, vibration, air pollution, speech, reading, children missing school because they're sick. We've covered that with our kids. Our pupils need to be able to walk safely to and from school. Of course they do. And we need connection. Our school needs to have a connection with all of the Bunnyfoot community and be able to do that safely. Oh, we're rocking through this now. Bunnyfoot Family Church. I'm also going to recognise here the Buddhist monastery and also the Tongan Wesleyan Church that are also in our community. The reason I wear this particular hat is because we believe it to be important to acknowledge the fact that Bunnythorpe, like many rural villages, is a village that for a long time has had its existence with the Christian church at its hub, with majority of founding members attending. Back then, the church fed the hungry, cared for widows, tended the sick, were the peacemakers in dispute and the point of call and death. Unfortunately, many churches have fallen wayside to that call. Bunnythorpe Family Church has not. For Bunnythorpe Family Church, we will be directly affected by noise pollution during our services. We need safe access for our community to come to us when needed, especially for every boys and girls rally kids. We have about 40 kids on the roll with that. We will not be able to safely run our annual Bunnyfoot Community Easter egg hunt, which will suck because it's very fun. Our community in need will not have safe access to the heavily used community pantry, and we will not be able to walk safely, us rally kids safely up to the recreation grounds either, which they do every single time. The ability for us to connect with the community within the full Bunnyfoot boundaries will also be hindered. Last hat, because I ran out of hats, they're really hard to find in winter. Hat 7, the Bunnyfoot community. Kiwi Rail sums up Bunnyfoot well. They said, Bunnyfoot residents have a very strong sense of local community. Yes, we do. Kiwi Rail also sums up the effects we will suffer if the hub and ring road goes in very well as well. They say, while noise and landscape mitigation may be implemented, the changes will still impact the value of importance to the local community. We are a strong community, we're a close-knit community, we're a community that speaks up for each other and looks out for one another. We're a community where children grow and leave, yet come back to raise their families, to give them the childhood that they had. We're a community that is built with farmers, blue collars, hard-working hands, big hearts and passionate people. We're also a community that is unified in saying no to the Kiwi Rail regional freight hub being put in Bunnythorpe and the regional freight ring road going through Bunnythorpe.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think there's probably time just for one question from the Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for that emotive submission, Rebecca. Well done. I love all the hats. It was very cool. It's a pity the media aren't here to get a couple of photos. But look, I have to say there's some stuff there where you're saying, so do you think Bunnythorpe's really safe with all the trucks and the trains going through it now?
Currently?
Yeah.
No, but that's stuff that we can mitigate.
Well, that's exactly what I think they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I understand that in terms of the roading, but what needs to be recognised is that the roading that's proposed at the moment by the City Council Horizons is going straight through the middle of Bunnythorpe, and I think the problem is that for Council Horizons, they look at it and don't acknowledge that where they're wanting to put it is actually Bunnythorpe.
I'm on actually the Road Transport Forum, and I just haven't seen that. I'm sorry.
It seems to be what the general consensus is.
No, I'm sorry, I disagree. But anyway,
Yeah.
so look, and also the other thing, my understanding of Bunnythorpe, and from 140 years ago, that when it was going to be Mugby, I think was the original name, that it was a railway town.
Yep.
But it moved to Palmy.
It still is a railway town in the sense that it has a railway running through the middle of it.
We're not saying that we don't like the railway, that's part of who we are, we just don't want a hub in our backyard.
Glaxo started there, Transpower are there. Aren't you a...
But we're not looking at the biggest, we weren't back there looking at the biggest hub in the Southern Hemisphere either.
We're worried about the bigger trains, they're going to be bigger trains, it's 24 hours.
Yeah, look, I get the concerns. It's maybe worth a discussion with us offline at some stage.
We've tried.
Nobody's come to my office, I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll bear that in mind. Yep.
Rebecca, thanks for your submission, and that'll be considered as a part of the deliberations in a
Cool.
couple of
Thank you.
weeks.
We'll be in contact.
Thank you very much. And we've got Quinlan and Cole. I believe you're going to come down and make your submissions together. Welcome. Submission 681 and 682.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councillors. We are here on behalf of Manawatu Water Polo to talk about how we would want a indoor 50-metre changeable depth pool. We travel to Wellington most weeks and have spent the last 3 weeks going to Wellington to play water polo at Rack and Huia. And these pools are 2 metres deep, are 25 metres long, and and we would like a 50-metre changeable depth pool in Palmerston North because it could bring in revenue and more national competitions, so we would not have to go to Auckland or Wellington to play.
Holding national competitions here would not only bring, and having a pool will not only bring jobs and obviously the economic impact to Palmerston North City Council, but we're able to introduce new sports. Underwater hockey is not something that we are highly regarded for here in Manawatu. Manawatu being a sporting hub. The increased use of canoe polo, right now they're training, we share the pool with them at Boys High, and they also have the lagoon, as you know of, but that would not only help them. In the past 2 weeks, I personally have travelled down to Wellington 4 times in order to just play water polo. Each of those times we have we've been able to play multiple games, and we've got major support from the community in Wellington. So that's pretty big for us. Not only that, but the pools are quite busy here in Palmerston North with multiple trainings going on. We're in the pool upwards of 10 hours a week training for water polo alone, let alone Ko here does swim training upwards of, I'd say, 20 hours a week. We have to share the pool with the swimmers, and I think that having a changeable depth pool will increase the sport of water polo and just help to introduce more growth into the sporting area of that.
I have spent $2,500 on travel just alone to play water polo competitions in New Zealand, and I've got another $1,500 to spend because I'm going to Christchurch to play under 16s and back up to Auckland to play under 18s.
While water polo might not sound like a very recognised sport, we actually have upwards of 120 players playing at the moment. We have senior men's, senior women's, and we have under 12s who also play flipperball, which is an easier version of water polo. Just in the pool alone, we have multiple under 16 and under 14 teams, both from Palmerston North Boys High School and Manawatu Water Polo Club. And that would just definitely help less clog up the pools, I guess.
We have also, from the swimming perspective, we have also lost the North Island Secondary School swimming because it's been moved back down to Wellington. This is because we don't hold a valued swimming pool. There's not enough space here, and Rack is a much better facility for swimming, and I'd rather not to travel down to Wellington just to swim a competition.
Just to give you an idea of how the changeable depth would work, it is a pool, and it's basically stainless steel beams covered by roughly about 3 millimeters of stainless steel plates, which can be later tiled over. Hydraulics and cables and water-based hydraulics move the pool, the cover, I guess you could say, on the bottom of the pool across the bottom. They are then held in by steel pins, just to give you an idea of how that would kind of work in that sense.
Question?
Yeah, we can open up to questions now, please.
Thank you, and also welcome to Leonardos, who's submission number 677. Did you want to add anything?
I'd just like to talk about how, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this from the club, but heard about a idea being put forward where the council would cover up the 50-metre pool at the Lido, and we would be like quite strongly opposed to that because the depth is nowhere near deep enough for us to be able to play. Like, we can just stand up on it and you're not actually allowed to in that. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
That would not solve the problem of us going down to Wellington and going up to Auckland and spending thousands of dollars on just doing that.
Okay. Thank you all. Yes, question from Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, just a point of clarification there. We've actually had obviously other submissions come in here about the same topic, and the submissions mostly were for a 25-metre pool, but then there's a collective view now 50-metre is better. But I just really want to get a feel for the numbers of players that we're talking about, because we haven't managed to get that information accurately.
Mm-hmm.
So in Manawatu, is there about 120 players that we're talking about? Is that
120 players in the Manawatu Water Polo Club. That does include players who travel down from Wellington to play for our senior men's team. Our under-16 coach, our under-16 coach, he travels from Wellington to coach us on a regular basis. So we've got about 120 players overall.
Great, thanks very much, and I think councillors probably have got a pretty good idea of the need now. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That concludes questions. So thank you, Quinlan, Cole and Leonardos, for coming in and making a submission that will be considered along with all the other submissions in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So that concludes our meeting. Thank you, everyone, and especially thank you to the council staff who have worked very hard this week. Have a good weekend, everyone.